Everybody ready? Awesome. Welcome to the workshop, Writing for Product Teams. I'm Chris Basham. I've worked as a user experience designer and front-end developer in the Enterprise Systems division of UX since 2012. I've been on many development teams, building lots of custom web apps. Product teams solve problems. This workshop is about being intentional with the words we use in our products so that they solve problems instead of create them. UX writing is the practice of using words to solve problems in digital products. You don't have to be a designer or a writer to get value from this workshop. This workshop is for any team member who has influence over the words that are used and how they are used. Last spring, I mentored an intern whose focus was on UX writing. We studied 3 books and practiced what we learned. The books in order of value to us were Writing is Design from 2020, Strategic Writing for UX from 2019, and Conversational Design from 2018. Many ideas from this workshop are borrowed from those sources. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, manages a robust set of guidelines pertaining to writing, among other things. The Understanding Docs provides an approachable overview of the guidelines, and this is also another primary source for this workshop. All resources for this workshop, including the slides and slide notes and links, are located on GitHub. And I'll show this slide or this link at the end as well. But if you go to go.iu.edu/7 capital T, capital R, P, that will get you here. And this has, again, instructions on opening up the slides if you want to. All the different sections are outlined here. So if you want to jump to specific parts, you can. And links to some of the different resources that are mentioned here. We need words is not the problem that we solve as UX writers, according to the book Strategic Writing. We communicate, we invite action, we inspire loyalty. Our teams need to know that UX writing can be used to solve problems. The process for writing can be summarized like this. Writing UX text is iterative, starting with less than perfect words, then replacing those words with slightly better words, and repeating until you find the best words. In this workshop, we will learn through examples and activities how to make the writing that we use in digital products to be useful, usable, and kind. Useful writing is purposeful. Usable writing is accessible, navigable, clear, and concise. Kind writing is helpful, inclusive, and conversational. This is our outline for the next 2 hours. So part 1, writing should be purposeful. Writing will be most effective when you identify the audience that will be reading it. Try to be more specific than general audience. It's not just students, but it is prospective students or enrolled students or alumni. There are parents, supporters, and caregivers to those students. There are faculty and staff. Each of these categories can, of course, get more specific to whatever your needs are. Once you've identified the audience, you can research your audience. How you go about this is beyond the scope of this workshop. But ultimately, research is about asking questions to learn. You should learn about your audience's knowledge, their expertise, interests, concerns, needs, tasks, and goals. Identifying, researching, and learning about your audience allows you to write for your audience. Write in a way to help your audiences find the content they need, understand that content, and then use that content to meet their goals. Many goals can't be solved alone. Cooperation requires a meaningful exchange of information or resources so all parties can meet their individual or shared goals. Exchange happens between a person and a system through a user interface. But a more common form of this meaningful exchange happens when two people just engage in a conversation. We can use our experience talking with one another as a guide for the writing that we use in our digital products. Because you've already identified and researched your audience, you can make conversation with your audience easy for them. You can now reduce the required effort or upfront knowledge they need to engage in the exchange. This happens when people in a conversation are cooperative. In this example, the waiter says, "Would you like wheat bread or gluten-free bread?" The customer responds, "Oh, wheat, please." The waiter confirms, "Great." In this case, the waiter states upfront the options available to the customer. The customer can provide a simple response by selecting one of those options. In contrast, a conversation can be difficult when there isn't cooperation. In this example, a customer asks, "Can you call me when the table is back in stock?" The representative of the furniture company bluntly replies, "No." The rep does not offer any further options. This requires the customer to kind of follow up with, "Then what should I do?" The rep coldly replies, "Check back later." This unhelpful exchange was frustrating for the customer, and it will demand even more of their time and effort if they really want that table. Now for an example with a system. A homeowner wants to hang drywall for the first time. This requires knowledge, materials, and tools. They discover Home Depot has an online guide to walk through this project with videos and written instructions. So here's the page. They've gained knowledge, but the page also lists the materials and tools that they may need. This is what's here in the right-hand side. These product pages then display where to find the product in the customer's local store. So in summary, the store aims to gain a loyal customer and their money by making it easy for the customer to learn about and complete their projects. Both the customer and the store benefit by this exchange. So now I'd like to hear from you guys. Think about an experience you've had or know about that involves a person and another person, or a person and a system. How are they trying to work together to achieve their respective goals, and did that work out? Anything come to mind? Go for it.
My group teaches staff how to use purchasing systems. So every day we deal in writing instructional guides and answering questions where those guides fall short.
Nice. Any other examples? Awesome. So have you interacted with anyone using those guides and seeing how like maybe some of the guides were maybe done better than other ones?
We do offer Zoom office hours every other Friday, and we let people share their screens and show us how they work through the process and provide live feedback in that way. But I can't think of an instance where they did like a one-to-one comparison of one documentation page over another.
Okay, awesome. Great, then we're gonna move on. So any questions on this part? Okay, then we're going to move on to our first activity. I guess maybe not everyone has a laptop, but we can still kind of do this even without it. So the goal of this activity is to write a meaningful conversation and make a user journey. So you can go here by going to go.iu.edu/7 capital M, 0, capital G. That will take you to this document. So we'll try to time box this entire section for about 20 minutes. But the purpose of this activity is to explore the many ways individuals can meet their goals through a conversation. These conversations can be summarized as user journeys, which are steps toward meeting a goal. These user journeys can be the basis for designing a user interface capable of supporting these journeys. The language used in the conversations can direct the writing used in the visual user interface. So I'm going to show you an example, and then I can walk through some of the instructions here.
The short link again.
Yes, the short link is 7, capital M, 0, capital G. So for here, the situation is a customer wants dinner to be delivered for their family of 4. And then there's the pizza rep on the other end. And maybe their goal is they want orders to be efficient and friendly. So here's the conversation that could be played out. So this conversation is an example of what you guys can be doing here for this activity. So the exchange could be, welcome to Pizza Planet. Is this for pickup or delivery? Delivery, please. I see your phone number. I see from your phone number that you've ordered from us this last month. Would you like the same order or something different? Customer says, remind me, what was the last order? It was a large pizza with feta, garlic, and pineapple. The breadsticks came with cheese sauce. Yeah, let's go with that. That'll be $26.50, tax and delivery included. Do you want to pay with a credit card on file or at time of delivery? I'll pay upon delivery. It should be delivered to your address on file in about 20 minutes. Would you like to receive text message updates to track the delivery? Sure. Is there anything else I can help you with? Nope, that'll be all. Thank you. So the user journey is the second part of this. So this is summarizing what that conversation is in just a series of steps. So it starts with you're initiating the order, then advances to determining pickup or delivery. Then it goes into some order details, particulars about the product. Then you go into payment, and then order tracking, and then a final confirmation there at the end. So again, we're going to try to go through this as far as we can with it. So this can actually be done in individually or groups in 2 or groups of 3. So I will leave you guys to determine how you want to go about it. It'll be a little bit faster in groups of 3 than groups of 2 or 1. But if it's a group of 3, you could have 2 of you guys basically having a conversation. The third person is just taking some rough notes. And so you guys are basically role-playing out a conversation. And then if it's a group of 2, maybe it's something where you guys just have like a text message exchange, if you guys are able to do that. Or maybe you're just like typing on your own computers back and forth. That could be a way of doing it. Or if you're a group of 1, you could just write out the conversation, or at least, roughly write it out yourself, and that's fine. And then again, after that conversation is done, then you can summarize it as a user journey, which is again, just what are the basic steps. If you feel more comfortable with it, you could flip it around. Maybe the user journey goes first, and then you go into the conversation. But I think there will be a lot of nuances that that you can get if you start with conversation first.
Sorry.
Go for it.
Shortly, one more time.
Yes, the short link is 7, capital M, 0, capital G. So let's see here. What I want to do, so this example was all about ordering pizza. But to make things a little bit more interesting, we can have different situations. So here are a few different examples, sample situations. And what I would like us to do is all of us to vote and choose the particular one that we want to do. And so I have 5 different ones. If there's anything that kind of comes to mind where you're like, oh, actually, here's a 6 or a 6 one, please go ahead and just type it in, and then we will vote on it. So an example is maybe a customer schedules a haircut, or a second one is a customer buys corn at the farmer's market, or a third one, a customer asks the post office about a missing package. 4, a friend invites you to their birthday party, or 5, a friend asks you to care for their pet this weekend. Any questions about anything so far?
Do you want us to vote directly on the Google Doc?
Yep. So just do, let's say you get 2 plus marks. So you can put them both in a single row or split them up if you want to. And if anyone wants to add additional goals on this, just add that in lines 6, 7, or 8.
You'll see those that have edit access.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. There we go. Thank you. Try refreshing and trying that again. Perfect. So if you're done, just like give me eye contact or raise your hand or whatever. Okay. Well, it seems, well, and just before we continue, no one else has an example goal that they want to put in for the running? Okay. So it seems like number 3 is a winner. Customer asks the post office about a missing package. So that's going to be the goal that you guys are going to try to work with. So down below after that, there is a section called activity, and there are subsections, groups 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I've made a bunch of those for you guys. So if you guys can log in, this is a place where you can put in your conversation and your user journey. You can do this live. You can do this after the fact. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but it's there if you want. Does anyone want to share what they had done? So I see there's some work in here. Group 1. Who's group 1? Any thoughts on any part of this? The conversation or the user journey or anything?
I think it pretty much shows a happy path.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So I think what this is going to be pretty interesting to see as we start going over to the other groups, what are the different paths that you guys all discovered? Okay, group 2, anything that you guys want to share about?
We also took a habit path,
Mhm,
the super helpful post office worker.
mhm.
I am a US. Yeah, so we just told her that we delivered it to the wrong address and we'll go get it and bring it to her,
Mhm.
which is maybe not.
Realistic, but she's trying to make everyone.
Yes. The best possible. Yeah. Group 3?
We had something similar with package not delivered, and
Mhm,
looks like it was an error in the software that we're passing along, getting the information, and also it looked like it was scanned and somewhere to be delivered by the end of the day, so and you got the details to pass along to your IT side, but you can go back and scan it correctly.
awesome. Group 4?
So detailed.
We had a error trying to find the package, so the customer does not have a tracking number, but they can provide their name and phone number. And the system had an error message, because it's a wrong phone number. So she said, can you try the number? And it says package found, and it was held up because it needs verification, like a signature to, for them to retrieve the package. So after that,
Nice. And any thoughts for you?
Yeah, I guess just for the user journey part, I felt like I struggled trying to figure out how detailed I should be with
Mhm.
all of the steps going through a conversation. Like
Mhm,
what warrants having a different step in a user journey.
mhm. Yeah, I think with that, I mean, maybe when you start with broad strokes, and you can, like an outline, you can get as specific as you might want to. And once you can start taking these different steps, and then let's say you want to start sketching an interface or something like that, you can, as you start moving into a different fidelity, you're going to be able to start to identify, oh, here's a little bit of a gap, here's some details that are missing. Maybe you want to go back and flesh out the user journey before coming back to the prototype. So it's a back and forth, iterative.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate? Okay. So anyway, this is fantastic. Thank you all for engaging. What I'm hoping from this is, again, you can say, here's a bunch of different user journeys. There's lots of different pathways that people can go through. You can start to, if you do this enough or add in a different variation, you can start to see where the gaps are, and then eventually you can have a more robust system based on that. As you're going through this, think about like the language that the individuals are using. What words is the customer familiar with? What words are the post office worker familiar with? And use that as a basis for the words that you're putting into the interface. And then here at the end, here's just some examples of variations that could be done. We'll get more into this into like the last activity if we have time for it. But for example, maybe so these are like not necessarily the happy path, right? So maybe the pizza rep is unaware that they're out of pineapple at the time of the order. Dun, 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 no pineapple, what happens? Or maybe the pizza rep just gives an incorrect delivery time. Maybe the customer forgot to update their delivery address after they had moved. So where does the pizza go? And then maybe the customer calls in the order and it's in a really loud room, so they have difficulty hearing one another. Any questions or additional comments about this? Okay, then we will move on. So part 2. In part 1, we learned that writing is purposeful when it helps people to achieve their goals. In part 2, we will learn how to make writing accessible. So writing is accessible if readers have the ability to distinguish the content in a text and perceive it as words and concepts. We can use text alternatives, color, text resize, and layout to help users read the text. So first, the WCAG success criteria. So success criteria is abbreviated SC. So they have a bunch of them. Success criteria 1.1.1 is this one. It talks about text alternatives. Images that convey information should have a description. So audio and video should have captions, descriptions, and transcripts. This provides alternative content for assistive technology like screen readers and braille displays. More information is available to users who may not be able to understand the content. Those who are not hard of hearing can still benefit from captions when, let's say, in a noisy room or in a situation in which they're just trying to be quiet. In this example, there's an image of the file name tomato.jpg, and the alt text is a cluster of ripe cherry tomatoes growing in a community garden. So hopefully that provides something a little bit more rich imagery than just tomato. For this next one, don't just use color as the only way to distinguish content. So in this example, this says, required fields are displayed in red and marked with an asterisk. If it's just in red, that's not enough information for all users. So provide some redundancy there. There's also with text contrasts, there's two different success criteria that you can refer to. And, the first one is a little bit more loose. The second one is a little bit more strict. But essentially, this talks about the text color itself and how it rests on a background color. And that needs to have some sort of contrast in order for you to be able to read it. So example here, again, we have the white text for the slide and the much darker background text. Text resize, this is where you want to have the ability to be able to resize the text upwards of 200%, but resize it in a way in which you're not losing any information. So this is like, if I'm scaling it and then content gets thrown off the screen, can you still get to it? Does it shift around in a way in which you can still see it? Yep,
Can I say something about
go for it.
So one thing that I hadn't thought about until I saw this happen was that people that are like my age and a little bit older actually start doing this so that they can see the text on the computer screen. And so I met with an advisor that had done this, and our address application wasn't working well for her because of what she was doing to resize the text. So anyways, it's important not just for people who can't see well, but I mean, obviously you can't see well here, but like a lot of people have that issue as well. I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, you have bigger monitors, maybe you want the text to scale up a little bit so you can actually see it. Also, when you want to make sure that when the viewport of the content is smaller, that as much as possible, try to avert horizontal scrolling. So primarily you are scrolling vertically, right? But whenever, if you're also having to scroll horizontally at the same time that you're also scrolling vertically, that can create some problems as well. This, of course, gets really challenging with things like tables, but that's a whole different topic. In terms of layout, so maybe aim for line length that is about 80 characters or less. Line spacing, you want that to be a little bit generous, so 150%. and paragraph spacing, you have a little bit more space between paragraphs, and text alignment in general, don't use justified text on the web. Lean toward left alignment, but other ones are fine, just probably not justified. And don't cut off or overlap text. Again, this can also happen when you are zooming and pinching in, but it can also happen where, some users have different defaults for their styles in the browser. So they want larger text by default rather than having to manually increase it. So you might not necessarily have full control over how the page looks. So just make sure that when things do adapt, that things don't get too wonky. If we open up this one as an example, this has a few screenshots as some examples of this. So this text was scaled up, but then now it's cut behind some other content. In this case, this text doesn't scale down to another line, it just gets clipped off. So the Rivet design system is something that's available for all of us. This is used for both applications and our websites. And there's a number of things that it provides that can help address some of these issues that we just talked about. So it has utilities concerning color and spacing and typography and visibility. So in terms of Rivet color, you can use RBT-color the particular color to put in the text color. You can also use a background utility class for doing background colors. If we go here to the documentation, you can see that there's actually a nice contrast checker. So in this case, you can say, here's all the different built-in colors that are available. You put it in and against another color within our same color suite. And then this will say, hey, there's not enough contrast there. And it shows the sample. So that's actually pretty handy. Let's see here. I think one of the examples, I'll just do a refresh. You can see here, when I refresh this by default, it has white on black, and then that meets the highest level of text contrast, which is AAA. So that's a handy little tool. And if you scroll down further, you can see the different color utilities that you can use, the color that it represents. Rivet also has some spacing utilities. So if you want to change margin or padding, or if you're using the newer gap utility, that can be useful if you're using CSS Grid or Flexbox. Concerning typography, with this, we have built-in font sizes that you can use. For example, if you say RVT TS, TS for type scale, and MD for medium, that gets you 26 point font. Also, the body is by default 1.5 line length. And so that also meets one of the criteria on the earlier slides talking about 150% line spacing. Also, you can use .rvt prose as a way to say, here's a whole chunk of content, just automatically style it for me. You can still do some additional overrides off of that if you want to, but that's at least a good start for it. Yeah. Prose is talked about here at the very bottom of that page. But yeah, there you go. And the Rivet visibility utilities, this allows you to say, hey, this text is just for screen readers only. That's the RVT SR only. Or maybe there are cases where you want content maybe hidden for everyone. And maybe there's some JavaScript behind that to toggle that. So any questions about making writing accessible? So this part and some of the upcoming ones, there will be no activities involved. We'll, again, if we have some time for activities, we'll do that here at the end. Then we're going to move on to part 3. Usable writing is navigable. So when landing on a web page, you need to get oriented, you need to move around and navigate to other pages. This can be done with titles, headings, landmarks, and links. The page title is the first piece of content presented to a user. This is what is displayed on a browser tab. Page titles typically consist of multiple parts in which it starts with a description of the page and it gets more broad and eventually labels the brand name of the site. That first part is usually should match the primary heading of the page. The parts could be separated with some character such as a dash or a pipe or a bullet. For example, the Employee Center task page on 1.iu it starts with Employee Center, has a pipe, goes into all IU campuses, another pipe, and then 1.iu. Headings should be used starting with the H1 element, which stands for heading level 1. Heading levels should stay consistent in the right order and not skipped. So going from 1 to higher up. They should precede the content that it describes. Its description should be relevant for its content, and it should be succinct. So in this example, you have 2 heading level 2s directly after a heading level 1, and the 2 heading level 2s, pepper and squash, do pertain to its the H1 of garden plants. Many HTML elements have an implicit meaning. They are landmark elements, which means they help users of assistive technology to navigate a page. It helps them to skip major sections of content, like the header and the banner, at the start of a page. They can skip to the main content area or even the footer at the end. It is especially helpful to label landmarks when there are multiple landmarks of the same kind. In this example, there are 2 areas of navigation. The primary navigation doesn't have a visible label, so the attribute ARIA label is used to just explicitly label it as primary for assistive technology users. The second navigation has the visible label on this page. And that's a heading level 2. In this case, the nav's label is determined by using ARIA labeled by attribute referencing the heading. The main element doesn't need a label because there should only ever be one of those elements. The links in the on this page navigation in this previous example weren't shown. They are examples of skip links. And so they just allow the user to jump the page to another section of content on the same page. Skip links are also part of the start of a page so that a keyboard user has the option to, for example, skip to the main content. This is useful for when, if you're already familiar with a site, you've already seen the header several times over, you just want to get to the main content. The Rivet header has this skip to main content already built into it. One should understand the purpose of a link by its surrounding context. However, links can be better if written such that the surrounding context is not even needed. For example, the link learn more requires the nearby text about grow bag gardening to understand what it's about. It's better to simply have the link that says grow bag gardening. In the second example, the text says, tap the search icon in the upper nav. There is no link. You have to guess what it means, and hopefully you've already noticed the search icon. It's better to write use search to find gardening tutorials, in which search is a link, and gardening tutorials could be a link to search results for gardening tutorials. And that text link is also provides a helpful example of maybe something that you could search for. Any questions about this section?
What is a landmark?
So a landmark is just a so there's lots of different HTML elements. There's dozens and dozens of them. I don't know how many. And you could categorize a smaller subset of those as landmarks. And so these 5 are just 5 examples of landmarks. And so those tags have this role associated with it. So that's just something that, like, you know, a screen reader knows. It knows if it sees something that is bracket header, it knows what that means. And we as people who are writing that HTML, we don't have to do anything more. So it's just built in. Any other questions? Yeah, so aside generally is meant to say this is some text that, or some content that doesn't necessarily fit directly into the content on that page. Like it could be something where it's here's a list of related links. As an example, it's something where you could take it away from the main content and you're not really losing information about what the page is trying to talk about. And it's also not critical to kind of understand that page. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? I would also say that if you go to MDN, MDN, if you type in MDN and then aside and go to the first one, this is Mozilla's documentation site. It's probably the most robust resource out there that really provides really good explanation of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like all the APIs behind it. So this provides even more examples. So I would recommend this site. Okay, part 4. Usable writing is clear. As we go through this part, keep in mind, improving clarity and using plain language is not dumbing down content. It is about opening it up to a wider audience. We can make our writing more clear by paying attention to the use of language, unusual words, pronunciation, and reading level. All pages should define the primary language of its text by using the lang attribute on the HTML element. In the case of English, use the EN value, which stands for English. And this helps text-to-speech software more accurately pronounce content. Where subsets of text differ from the page's primary language, use a different lang value on its containing element. So in this case, DE is for German, IT is for Italian, and FR is for French. There are many categories of words that we use which may be challenging for someone to understand. For example, gig might have multiple definitions depending on the context. Code blue is jargon because it is meaningful primarily to medical professionals. Shiner is a British slang for a black eye. Hot potato is an idiom meaning a controversial issue. ROI is an acronym meaning return on investment. LB period means pounds. These words should be defined so users know what they mean in the given context, or even better, the content could be written so the words are never really needed. Where a word is defined in line, wrap the word in a DFN or definition element. In this example, the text is a basil plant is an aromatic annual herb of the mint family, and basil plant is wrapped in that DFN tag. Definitions can also be curated in a glossary. Words can be linked to the term on the page or another page altogether. In this example, the word basil links to its definition in a glossary section near the end of the page. The DL or description list is the appropriate container to use for a set of key value pairs. The link references the DT or the description term element. Abbreviations can be defined or expanded in line. For example, first-year applicants of Indiana University, IU in parentheses, must have a minimum GPA, grade point average of 2.5. Now, the rest of the page can freely use the abbreviations IU and GPA because it has been declared. If the expanded form is not desired, it should at least be declared. This can be done with the ABBR element, short for abbreviation. In this example, IU v OSU contains 3 abbreviations, which can be individually expanded to mean Indiana University versus Ohio State University. Some words can be troublesome to pronounce. Like unusual words, their pronunciation can be expanded inline or linked to. For example, the name coach tool allows students to record themselves speaking their name. This can be listened to in Canvas, so the instructor or classmates can know how to properly speak their name. If writing for general audiences, then writing should be at a middle school reading level. This is achieved by using short words that are common. If it is a name or a title, then that doesn't need to be altered. Short sentences also help. Reducing the reading level is a way to help readers with cognitive impairments or those in which English is not their primary language. There are readability tests that can be used to help reduce the reading level. But also keep in mind that they are predictions and not guarantees of how understandable any given text is. But if you know your audience, as we've already discussed in the first part, then you should know how to write for them, using the language that they know. So if your audience is alumni, you know that they have a college level reading, they have a college degree and a college reading level. And so they will have also experience going through an academic institution. Use words consistently. For example, if the search field in the website's header does the same thing on every page, the submit button should be labeled the same way on all those pages. Don't label it search on one page and find on one page and go on another. Text should be predictable. However, if making the text consistent actually reduces clarity, then it's better to be inconsistent in those cases. Any questions?
More of a statement, I guess, especially about acronyms. I had something recently, I didn't write it myself, but I put it into a format for other people. And they came back and said, and it was an IT related group, but they wanted, me to go back into the document and spell out, like, what does WCMS mean?
Mm.
What does, RFP?
Mhm.
You know, and I was a little surprised that this audience didn't know
Mhm.
what those abbreviations meant. So yeah, I mean, spell doing it the first time and
Mhm.
putting it in parentheses, then you can just move on and don't have to worry about it. It's great.
And did you have enough in which you kind of felt like a larger glossary of terms or whatever was needed, or? Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Any other comments? Yeah.
For the definitions and abbreviations
Mhm.
tags, do those like change the way that the text appears on the page? Does that have any other functionality aside from just being like a screen reader tool or?
Yeah, I think it's primarily, it's been a while since I've looked at it. I know at least when it comes to the ABBR element, by default, it uses dotted underlines as a way to distinguish it. I'm not for sure whether the DFN does that as well, but that's one way in which that's a built-in style. But yeah, primarily it's about, providing a little bit richer information that then the browser and assistive technology can use to change how it describes this information. Or even it provides a way for a machine like, like a search engine crawler to be able to interpret text in a better way.
The abbreviations,
Mhm.
should the abbreviation be in the parentheses or should the expanded thing be in the parentheses?
You can do it either way. So, yeah, the example that I had was kind of purposely showing both cases. So, just whatever you think is going to be more useful or flows better in it. So it's contextual. I think if you go to this technique V97 page that's linked here, that will provide more examples and other things like that, and elaborate on that point. Anything else? Okay. Okay, part 5, usable writing is concise. We will now cover 3 ways to be concise: by shortening content, by breaking up content, and by disclosing content. First of all, look for useless information. Limit the purpose of a page to limit the information that is needed. This will clarify the particular context, the facts, and the requirements that should be displayed on any given page. If it doesn't help the user accomplish their purpose for visiting a page, it is a distraction and likely should be removed. Many prepositional phrases can be shortened with fewer words. For example, instead of saying a number of, you could say several or a few or many. Instead of saying is able to, you could say can. Instead of in order to, you could just say to. Or maybe instead of saying on a yearly basis, you could just say yearly. Some adverbs don't add value and can generally be eliminated. Some examples are the words definitely, extremely, really, truly, and very. Oftentimes, you could, if you have a case in which that adverb is something that you're wanting to add, you can probably take the adjacent adjective and just replace the adjective with something that's a little bit more meaningful. So instead of saying like very thirsty, you could say parched, like may. Okay. Use active voice instead of passive voice. This will clarify the responsibilities of the subject in the sentence with pronouns and sometimes even shorten the sentence length. For example, instead of saying it was done, you could say we did it. Instead of it was done by them, you could say they did it. And instead of it must be done, you could say you must do it. Break up long blocks of content to make it easier to skim and understand. Break sentences containing maybe inline lists into bulleted lists. Break up similar data points into tables. Break up long paragraphs into multiple paragraphs. Break up related content into sections with headings. Some content may be helpful to some users, but an annoyance to others. Allow users to opt in to seeing additional content, and you can do this with accordions, with disclosures, and with just links to other pages or links to other content later in the page. As an example of those, here if you're using Rivet, here's an accordion. And then if you're curious about a disclosure, that's simply that little chevron, and then you can just toggle that. A person averages to say about 120 to 150 words per minute. In contrast, screen reader users commonly configure the reading speed to be several times faster than that. So given this, don't be afraid to sacrifice brevity or clarity, especially when extra context is needed or useful. Any questions about being concise?
So why are words like very, really not good to use? What's the reason?
So this is probably a little bit more of a common thing for like people writing novels and other things. But in general, it doesn't really add a whole lot of value knowing something that is very more than just itself. If it's not adding value, then you just don't need it. And again, a lot of times those words can be hints to say, maybe there's a better way of writing this. Maybe there's some different words that you haven't considered using that could help to put a little bit more interest and meaning behind what you're trying to say.
Did I use them writing for a lower reading level audience?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a number of things that you could go about that where you're like, well, test it with them, of course. That could be a way to see whether that works well. But yeah, I mean, we're going to get into some, let's see here. Oh, actually, this will transition into addressing some of that. So I will get to that in a couple of minutes. Any other things?
Accordions. I like accordions, especially when it's going to be a big, long answer and it only applies to a certain number of people, right? So you can look at all the choices and just
Mhm.
theirs without scrolling through stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I've been working on some web pages recently and they're trying to get us to not use them, and it seems like it's an accessibility issue. Is that what it is? Is there a reason that they're trying to discourage? Reason you can think of, that they'd be trying to discourage accordions?
I mean, I guess one thing maybe is that, I mean, depending on how you implement it, I could see there maybe being some trickiness with getting it right. I mean, at least when it comes to, like there are some newer HTML elements, such as the details and summary, which provides a built-in ability to do a disclosure. There's some newer APIs that are being developed, which allow you to do accordions without needing to do any JavaScript. But again, that's still probably a couple of years out before all the browsers really adopt those APIs. So I could see maybe there being just a technology issue behind that. I'm not quite for sure.
Yeah, I have a theory, but not an answer. There was like a misunderstanding or maybe a myth for a while amongst my group that screen readers couldn't access the information inside of accordions, or that if you were to search the page doing like a control F, you wouldn't see the results inside the accordion.
Mhm.
But I think that was ultimately disproven. Can you confirm or deny that? He's our web designer. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe that could be something that is trickling around.
Maybe so.
That's my theory.
Yeah, I think that if JavaScript is creating it, having you click the accordion expand, maybe the screen reader doesn't see it until that point, which can be
Yeah.
problematic.
Right.
But if it's just on the screen and hidden, the screen reader can see it, but you can't until
Mhm.
it's expanded.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that can also maybe get into like some of those different visibility utilities that I talked about, depending on what you're using, maybe some content is hitting for all users in all cases versus maybe it's available to just some. So I think there's a lot of ways in which it could be done wrong,
Mhm.
and maybe they're just trying to be cautious.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Anything else? Okay. So for this next part, I'm just going to talk about some different activities that you can use to help make your writing more usable. We're not going to actually do an activity here because we don't have time for that. The first is just read aloud, just see how naturally whatever you're writing sounds like. I know for me, like I have more of a habit of I'm just typing something out and then suddenly if I would actually read it out, it's like, wow, this makes no sense. Or maybe it's just like one giant run-on sentence. So just speak it out loud. If it doesn't seem natural to you, then rewrite it to make it seem more natural. Maybe it's something where you actually want to just like dictate it. So, open up Google or Word or whatever and say dictate, and you just speak it out loud and use that as a starting point. Another one is paraphrase testing. So this is something where, maybe you try to get 5 to 9 people or whatever. And what you're doing is saying, here is a piece of content that I've written, read it, and then just paraphrase what you would just read. And this is trying to kind of get at how much did they comprehend or understand what they had just read. So you're looking for misunderstandings. And then especially if you are, you get results from multiple people and you start to see some similarities, you can say, oh, okay, yeah, that part just really doesn't work. Content testing is also something that could be done with multiple participants. And this is something where, maybe rather than paraphrasing the content, they're looking through it and they have 2 different ways to kind of mark the text. Maybe you have a way to say, I'm going to circle some content and say that by circling it, that content is helpful for me. Like this answers the question that I have about this content, or it explains something in a really good way. In contrast, you could maybe underline it and underline other content within that sample. And that means this is not helpful for me. This is confusing. I don't get it. Here's an acronym that I don't know what that thing is, RFP. So again, this is to help to illuminate what are those areas that are confusing or are fine. And readability testing, this gets to Luke's question here, I think a little bit. And so this is a tool, the Hemingway editor is one that is pretty useful. And this helps you to make sure that you're writing to a particular reading level. So in this case, I have some sample text that's in here. You can see there's a lot of highlights because there's a lot of problems that it's noticing. And you can see that, this is saying, hey, there's a grade 11 reading level based on how it's calculating it. There's also, it highlights different adverbs that, maybe could be removed. Maybe there's passive voice being used. There's certain phrases that could be tweaked a little bit. Maybe there's some long sentences. There's also a paid for version that I have not tried. And that actually introduces some AI technology that can actually automatically suggest changes. But anyway, yeah, this will, live change things as you do it. So that can be pretty handy. Any questions about any of those things? Okay, so we've talked about how writing should be useful and how writing should be usable. And now our last major section is writing should be kind. So kind writing is helpful, part 6. We should stop using the term edge case. This is kind of a way that we use to dismiss a group of users. And similarly, don't blame users, even if it is actually their fault. Blaming doesn't help them to meet their goals. Help them meet their goals. Instead of using the term edge case, use stress case. This emphasizes emotion. Consider the user's emotional state and their emotional journey while they are using your digital product. Consider how the words they encounter in your digital product impacts their life outside of that immediate experience. We should help users get things done despite the stress that they already have in their lives. Hopefully, the interaction they have in our digital products won't increase that stress. But errors will happen, so anticipate them. And once you can anticipate them, then you can try to handle them gracefully. And this can be done by avoiding the error, by explaining the error, and by resolving the error. So here are 3 different ways that you can help to avoid errors from happening. First, provide instructions explaining what to expect and maybe how to operate the thing. Second, list the available options so that it's not open-ended, or maybe even constrain the options. So, you could use checkboxes or radio buttons to make sure that those are the only choices that are available. Third, place any requirements of an input field before the input field. Don't place it after it or wait until the form is submitted. For example, if the instructions password must include a symbol is placed after the password field, then the user may not see the requirement until after they have tried to enter the password. If it is placed before it, then the user has a greater chance of being able to have success on the first try. Some errors can't be avoided. When this happens, display a clear and concise message. Reassure them concerning loss of time or data if possible, and link to pages that might contain more information which may help users understand what is happening. After explaining an error, then if possible, list the options they have to move forward. Help them make progress toward reaching their goal. So as an example, the page is not found error is pretty common. So instead of just displaying only 404, nothing else, or don't blame the user for landing on a page that isn't there. Instead, just be personal and be direct. You could say something like, "We couldn't find the article you're looking for," and then you could use some additional features on the site to help direct them toward maybe finding something that could be useful for them, so they could still make progress. So, for example, you could say, "Try to search for the article," or explore articles by category. So that gives them 2 options to still try to make some progress. Any questions about this section? Okay, yep.
Okay.
How do you feel about please click? Everybody please click. I tend to take it out when I'm teaching other people's writing because it feels a little over to
Mhm.
me.
I will get into that in the next section.
Okay, great.
Anything else? Okay. Kind writing is inclusive, part 7. The words we use should make people feel included and welcome. But as the book Writing is Designing states, if the language you use tells a potential user that you didn't think about their experience when building the thing, they're not going to use it. So this is a huge topic, but we're just going to be focusing on 2 aspects given our time constraint. How can we be more considerate of the choices that people make regarding their technology and their identity? Spatial words like top, bottom, left, and right are not appropriate for describing content that can be experienced in linear ways. For example, when a website is on a mobile device, all the content stacks vertically. When a website is being announced by a screen reader, well, that's being read linearly. Words like beginning, end, before, and after should be preferred because they scale in more contexts. To your point, in general, do not use words that describe what the user should do with their device, such as clicking a mouse, tapping the screen, pressing a button, or see the printout. Instead, use words that describe the action the user wants to do with the interface, such as choosing an option, selecting text, using the search, or viewing more details. That help a little bit?
Well, yeah, and then I thought, oh, he's gonna talk about the click part because I do know better and I have to feel, but my point is the please part.
Mhm.
Please choose this, please select this, as opposed to the just, you're giving directions to someone,
Yeah.
obviously. And we're talking about reducing numbers of words
Mhm.
on a page, numbers of characters, whatever. And to me, saying please while polite and kind,
Mhm.
it seems a little over.
Well, I will get into that in the next and final part.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on this point? Okay. Don't tie a tool or a product to a role. So instead, describe how a tool or product can benefit the user when trying to accomplish a task. For example, don't say saws are for carpenters. Say saws help you to shape wood or cut wood. This wording change invites everyone to work on wood crafts regardless of their experience. You don't just have to be a professional to use that tool. The word they is a neutral way to talk about a person because it doesn't imply a gender. So rather than writing something clunky like she/he or apostrophe s he, just say they, such as they will be in touch. Don't overthink it. Don't assign value, and especially negative value, to things that describe a person. For example, instead of wheelchair bound, say wheelchair user. Instead of suffers from autism, just say has autism. Just state the facts in a neutral way. But we should respect how people identify themselves. For example, in the book Writing is Designing, they talked about an accomplished national athlete named Nina. She said, I hope I'm inspiring because I worked really hard to be a good basketball player, not because I use a wheelchair. So she identifies herself as a basketball player. There are many more topics that could be explored than just technology and identity. Here's a list of them, ability, disability, age, appearance, ethnicity, race, nationality, gender, sex, sexuality, health, socioeconomic status, spirituality, religion, and atheism. Articles and resources on these topics can be explored more on the Conscious Style Guide website. And there's actually going to be a book released on this here on May 28th. So that might be a good resource to explore more. So this is on consciousstyleguide.com. And there's a preview of the book. Any questions on this part? Okay. Last part. Kind writing is conversational. This final part will explore how writing can be context aware, be polite, and have some personality. And that gets you your part. Writing that is context aware is sensitive to circumstances such as time of day, location of the user, and any preferences the user has set. For example, a person's phone might be aware that they are going to a movie theater this evening, according to their calendar. Before leaving, the phone asks if silent mode should be turned on once they arrive in order to avoid disturbing others during the movie. In contrast, a system can cause emotional distress if it does not tailor messaging for the situation. For example, an event platform that assumes that all events are joyous is insensitive to situations like a memorial arranged for friends and family of someone who recently died. In this example, the text says, "Exciting news, you have been invited to Celebrating the Life of Jack. RSVP now." Writing that is polite respects the user's time and anticipates needs. For example, a prompt from a utility service could encourage the user to set up auto bill payment. It could say, "Would you like to set up auto payment? We will email you a week before the monthly bill is due, so you have time to contact us about it before you are charged." So in this case, the user can set up auto payment and they don't have to come back into the interface every month and maybe forget something. But they still provide an option to make corrections as needed. Writing that is not polite wastes time, imposes, or is rude. For example, a person is reading an article and a pop-up automatically appears saying, "Spin this wheel to win." Then to make it worse, the close button is tiny and hard to see. It's just a distraction. I just want to read the article, please. Writing can also have personality. This is often spoken in the terms of voice and tone. Voice is simply the information behind what is said. Tone is the emotional way that information is conveyed. The particular style of tone depends on the audience, the context, and the values the organization is conveying. Some tones will be used more than others. Not all tones will be used. And here are some examples of tones. It could be encouraging. It could be friendly, please. It could be informational. It could be reassuring, supportive, sympathetic, trustworthy. Different tone styles will direct the word and phrase choices we make and the structure of the sentences we write. Ultimately, a little goes a long way, so don't overdo it. Keep it simple. Please is one word. That's pretty simple. So here's just some examples. Maybe an informational tone style is a little bit more dry. Item deleted. Nothing more than that. Maybe you have a situation in which you want to be more reassuring. So in this next one, it says, "You can restore deleted items from the trash bin for the next 30 days. So it gives the time, it reassures users that they have some time to make some corrections. This last one is trustworthy. So we keep your data encrypted and secure. We can't see it. We won't sell it. It is yours forever. It's instilling trust and kind of laying some ground rules. Any questions? Okay. So we do have 20 minutes. I know this has been pretty intense. We can go into another activity if you guys want to. We can also just call it off a little bit early if you guys want to. But I can at least minimally go over the activity. So if you guys want to do it on your own, that could certainly be an option. So for this last part, if you go to the URL, the short URL of 7, capital T, capital R, B, that will take you to this last Google Doc. And actually here, I will make sure that that can also be edited. So so with this one, what this is trying to do is explore how a conversation could respond to non-ideal situations. Despite the problems, can participants overcome and still meet their goals? How could the participants feel after this conversation? And what are the outcomes of this conversation for the individuals or others? So in the first part, I think a lot of people chose the happy path. This is trying to push on that and say, what are some of those unhappy paths? So we don't know the fullness of what a person experiences before, during, or after they use the digital products that we design. We should aim for stress-free interactions, extend grace, and be kind to our users. So again, I'll walk through the instructions and an example of the situation. And then we can just say that you guys can kind of explore that on your own. But in general, this is trying to riff on the first activity that you guys did as a group. So you could use the whole interaction with the post office as the starting point and tweak it. So for example, one participant encounters a problem, that problem does or does not get resolved. What happens there? Or maybe one participant in the conversation is not polite to the other. Or maybe there's some contextual information that they're not aware of, that one party is not aware of. Maybe one person continually interrupts the other. Maybe one person is not being truthful. Maybe they don't realize that they're not being truthful about something. Maybe someone is not being cooperative. Maybe someone is not being quick and clear. So let's say that you either expand on the conversation that you already had, or just start a new one. But after that, so we talked about the emotional or the user journey. For this talks about the emotional journey. So how does someone respond in those situations that aren't really the happy path? And think about how that emotional journey, that emotional state where they end up landing, how does that affect the person, their day? How does that affect other things outside of that one interaction? Does that affect, family or friends or whatever else? And then this could eventually feed into something else like, okay, based on these emotional responses that you're seeing here, are there different ways that we can, like different tone styles that we can use to help ease the situation? So here's the example. I'm going to go back to the pizza conversation. So the change is that the pizza rep was unaware that they were out of pineapple at the time of the order. So this is the same conversation that I had already said before, so I'm not going to repeat it. But let's say a few minutes later, the pizza rep calls the customer. Hi, this is Pizza Planet. Calling about your order you placed a few minutes ago. It turns out we don't have pineapple. Would you like to substitute it for something else? Sure. Oh, okay. Maybe green pepper? Yeah, good choice. Yes, I can confirm we do have green pepper. We apologize for this frustration and delay in your order. We will make delivery free today, and we will provide you with a coupon for free delivery on a future order. You can expect your pizza in about 20 minutes. Oh, that's great. Yeah, thanks for your help. Thank you for choosing Pizza Planet. So the emotional journey of this. One, confused. So the customer is initially confused by the phone call. Then they're kind of disappointed. The delay and extra time on the phone is disappointing in itself. Then maybe they feel satisfied. So there's the free delivery and the coupon seems like fair compensation. And then they're pleasantly surprised because the customer and because the pizza rep called to actually resolve the issue. You know, otherwise maybe it would been something that they just discovered whenever the pizza arrived and it's not what they wanted. But then they get hopeful again because, you know, maybe they will likely order from Pizza Planet again because they were treated well in that interaction. They're also hopeful because, you know, they would recommend Pizza Planet to others because they had a cumulatively more of a positive experience than a negative experience. And importantly, it ended in a positive note. Oftentimes, if you have a conversation where maybe it's all positive and then it ends on negative, even if it's a small little negative thing, that can be something that kind of manifests and maybe just ruins everything else. And finally, maybe there's a bit of a trust there. The free delivery coupon will remind the customer of this problem turned positive experience the next time that they order. So anyway, keep that in mind. And if you are interested in trying to figure out what are different emotions that you can kind of pick on, there's a nice Wikipedia article that has lots of different emotional classification systems that you could use. And you could use that as a tool. Any questions on that activity that we will not do because we don't have time? Okay, well, as you leave, think about how you can make your writing more useful, usable, and kind. Thank you for your time. And again, the short URL to the GitHub repo that contains all the links is at go.iu.edu/7 T R P. Thank you.